Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. Let's start this episode with a question. What's the highest form of praise a customer can offer you? Now, renewal is certainly a good place to start as they let their actions do their talking. But I'm thinking of a word, a P word, one that I know makes me proud when I hear it from our clients. If you run a company, especially a services company or a company with a large service component, I believe the highest compliment your customers can pay you is to call you a partner, or better yet, a strategic partner. Now, this is a show about and for marketers, so you might ask, well, can marketing play a role in developing these kinds of relationships? And the answer is yes, and obviously we're going to cover that. That's why we have this show. But I want to have another source for this, and I want to read something from Gartner, because Gartner definitely thinks this. And, you know, I've had Brent Adamson on the show. I'm a big fan of Gartner's thinking. Anyway, they did a report, which I happened to read this morning, a 2019 report on a category you may not know about. It's called Enterprise iPaaS. That's a category. And it's called Integration Platform as a Service. Now, Gartner had this to say about one of their category leaders. That's the one in the upper right quadrant. And it said, in 2018, Dell Boomi invested significantly in its marketing, which has notably improved its visibility and standing to the extent that is now perceived by its reference clients as an innovative strategic partner. Bingo, marketing gets you to strategic partner. Love that. Now, by the way, Gartner also noted that Dell Boomi has a churn rate below 3%, which is quite amazing given that they have over 8,000 customers. Now, at this point, you'll never guess who my guest is. My guest is Mandy Dhaliwal, the CMO of Dell Boomi, the very same one that Gartner had such high praise for. So first of all, Mandy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Drew. What an amazing introduction. Wow.
Well, I've been on one show where they have wild applause after the introduction, and I've marveled at it, and I did the best I could. Anyway, I know you joined the company in September 2018, and you've held several senior marketing posts at a number of Silicon Valley-based tech companies. And what I laughed about as I was looking at it, you actually worked at 3 companies that were acquired, one by EMC, one by CA, and another by Akamai. And finally, you get to Dell Boomi. They had already been acquired, so you didn't have to worry about that. So that's a nice thing. Now, I mentioned strategic partnership, but I also, and we're going to talk about that, but I have a question for you that we didn't discuss in our prep call. I couldn't help but notice on your LinkedIn profile that you are a certified sommelier. Now, I just can't imagine, how does a Canadian-born daughter of Indian immigrants with 2 degrees in marketing end up as a certified sommelier?
Great question. I get this one quite frequently. Curiosity. Right. That's where it stems from. I found myself coming to the Napa Valley when I lived in Canada and, got the bug. And when I ended up moving here, immigrating to the United States, it was by design. Wine country was within driving distance. And it was always something on my list. And, it's a nice distraction from tech as well.
I bet. Now, have you ever been able to bridge those 2 things, like having a client event that you're also doing a wine tasting, anything like that?
Absolutely. I live for that. And most of my field marketing teams know that. So we do women's sip and shares now.
Nice.
As a Boomi program. Also in the past, I've been known to take clients out with the sales team and have 4-hour wine pairing dinners that result in some really great conversation and teaming. So wow. It's my golf course. That's how I like it. It's your golf
course. I love it. All right. So real quick, favorite Napa winery?
Wow. Multiple wineries. For me, I think Paul Ma's Winery is one that I really like in the new appellation of Coombsville.
Okay, cool. And a favorite restaurant or wine bar in Silicon Valley?
Favorite restaurant, Manresa in Los Gatos in my hometown here.
There you go. All right. So perfect. We've now covered wine, which is always a good place to start for any episode, considering that a large part of the consumption of this show is when folks are driving to work in the morning or running. So I'm sure they're ready to be thinking about their glass of wine. Anyway, you started at Boomi in fall of 2018. What attracted you to that role?
Great question. I think, combination of things. For me, I saw a lot of potential. The company had tremendous product market fit, which was exciting to me because I'd been in startups trying to get to that promised land, and to have a company that was actually already there and selling very effectively was important to me. Also the market leadership, the customers, right? When I met with the head of sales, who's become a very strong business partner for me in this role, he said to me, he goes, Mandy, the product works.
That's nice, isn't it?
In B2B tech, can sometimes be a challenge. And so when I dug in, there was a lot there that I felt I could add value and really be able to tell the story differently. And, the cultural fit as well. I think the team, the focus on the culture in terms of winning and focusing on the customer were things that attracted me to the business.
So it's, I think I'm going to pause for a moment and remind folks that not every product or service is as good as some of the competition. And then in the tech world, this is often very true. And so the marketer in those cases is really expected to work miracles. I mean, sell this despite all the flaws that everybody knows about and you see in every single report. So here was a case where the product was really strong, but I think I remember there were some things, and you mentioned in your thing that there maybe was a positioning opportunity to think about. And so I'm just curious, because you mentioned you felt there was an opportunity. You didn't need to fix the product, which is good, but right. So what were the opportunities then that you saw for your role?
Yeah, the biggest thing that struck me, it was the balance of the brand and demand, right? As a marketer, this is why we exist in this modern digital era. And for me, the narrative was something that needed to be refined. We were selling in a very tech-centric motion, which is awesome because we're selling to tech-centric buyers. But what we were missing was the why. Why does Boomi exist? And also, because it's such a horizontal platform, I could literally start my car with the platform. It's that capable, right? But how do I go monetize that? And how do I go drive a business to $1 billion trajectory without some use cases that are repeatable? Right? We were selling everything to everyone, and we were, Wild West, great startup trajectory, all good, but it was time to start to harness that growth. So the why. Why did we exist?
So pause for a second there, and I want to help people understand. So in the old world, those of us who have been in tech a long time remember a notion called middleware. Yes. And that was the notion of things that connected other things. And my understanding, which is really primitive, of what you all do is you've sort of moved middleware to the cloud in a sense. And I'm just, stop me at any point in time and in as few words as possible, explain what, this iPaaS is, a platform as a service kind of notion. What are we talking about here?
Great question. It is the glue. If I were to really simplify it, it's the glue between your data, your systems, your processes, and your applications in the enterprise.
So a use case example, so that the glue, so give me just a quick example of what that means.
So if I'm looking to have an interaction with a customer, I need to figure out, so Mandy calls into a call center, right? I call into Dell, for example, and I have a security related question, right? Which division do I need to be routed to? How do they have that single record of me to understand if I call into a generic 800 number where I belong in their portfolio of companies, right? Okay. So the integration of the data, so I exist in Salesforce in probably 2 to 3 companies. I exist in some customer success platform. How do you triangulate all that data and route me to the correct place? customer experience is king these days. So how do we start to take those data synapses and drive a unified experience, if you will, for the customer?
Okay. So I want to get back to why. And it's a question that lots of companies are asking. It's obviously very important. Tell me where you started the investigation of why your company exists and so forth. Yes.
Yeah, it started in the interview process. I started digging in there. Why are customers buying? What problems are we solving? And then once I got on board, I did a listening tour. That was critically important to me. We're a small division within the portfolio of Dell Technologies. So talking to stakeholders within Dell, talking to our sales teams, talking to product teams, success, et cetera, other executives and customers to determine the value that we were adding and why they were choosing us.
And so you do all these interviews, customers, talk to lots of customers. How did you sort of synthesize all of what you heard?
Well, I needed a good partner. So I had an agency that was helping out on this as far as the positioning goes, because we were looking to get really pithy, if you will, in terms of the value prop. So lots of conversation, lots of consensus building, lots of conversation with the executive team in particular to rationalize and vet and drive alignment. That was critically important as well. Having said that, we did this all within a 6-week period over a holiday.
6-week period over a holiday. I'm so glad you pointed that out. That is very fast.
Yes.
It's interesting because I know it can be done that fast. The challenge is that with something like this, the need for foundational support is so important too, right? And so you have to touch a lot of people in a very short period of time so that when you report back with the ta-da, there's the potential for buy-in, right?
Right. I didn't do the ta-da.
Okay.
So I'm not a fan of the ta-da. And I'll tell you why. Because it sets you up sometimes for failure, right? I like to collaborate and involve people and have stakeholders at the table. So it's a team project versus marketing, building something and unveiling it. There's plenty of opportunity for that when we do ad campaigns and fun stuff that really we can push the envelope on, but stuff that this is such as messaging and positioning that is mission critical to a business has to have a lot of fingerprints on it, and it has to have the right fingerprints. Okay.
Well, at the risk of we're going to take a quick break, and because I want to get back to no ta-da, and I want to really dig into that. So
Sure.
How we do it. Okay. So stay with us. Hey, it's Drew, and I wanted to have a quick conversation about turning lemons into lemonade. Here are the lemons: skiing, Park City, January 11th, third day, last run, going fast. Light was bad, a lot of snow on the ground. 50 yards from the bottom, I crashed and burned. Literally tumbling down the mountain, did a 3-point landing with my head and 2 thumbs. Broke the right thumb, sprained the left thumb, finished up surgery 5 days later. And now I have a little extra time on my hands. What do? I finish a special report that I've been dying to finish for a long time, which is a way for me to get to my next book. It's a preview of the book. You can find it on renegade.com. On the very beginning of the homepage at the top, there's a banner that says B2B Special Report. I would love it if you took a look at this and let me know what you thought. I think you're going to find a lot of value in it. Okay, we're back, and we're talking about a 6-week process that you went through to determine what Dell Boomi's purpose is. And so if you tell me first of all, what was the purpose? How did you articulate it?
So our mission, the reason we exist, is to accelerate our customers' business outcomes.
Accelerate business outcomes. Okay.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And the things underneath that are, we have a visual drag and drop interface to our platform. Mm-hmm. We are cloud native. We were the very first cloud integration company. We invented the space. So time to value and agility are core to our platform. So acceleration is a word that we competitively own in our market space.
So it's all about accelerating, being able to help your customers do that. Was there, and that's sort of internal language. Was there external language?
That is the external language. That's what our customers were telling us. Boomi sped up a project that would have taken 16 developers in a year, we did it with 5, and we did it in 3 months. So those were nuggets that we were able to establish from our customer voice.
All right. So you have that expression of your purpose, if you will, or you use the term mission. How did you then say, we're not having a ta-da? How do we bring this to market? Or how did you introduce it?
So we unveiled it, to the extent that it wasn't unveiled, to the broader sales organization at our sales kickoff.
Okay.
So I presented the positioning there.
Okay, to an internal, which is really critical. And how did you get feedback from them at that point?
So we did it in a couple of segments. The first thing I did was introduce the notion of accelerating business outcomes in my keynote. And then day 2, we went back and had the panel of executive leaders within the organization do a Q&A. So I walked through the pillars of the messaging with each of the executives, and they chimed in. So it was live Q&A, but it was a live conversation. And from there, when we rolled into the customer-facing sales decks and so forth, we had an opportunity for feedback across all the geographies. They were involved as well in the upfront work, but then we were able to battle test it with some customers as well once we got everybody smart on it. And we also went through an accreditation process with our sales makers. So the entire sales organization, sales kickoff happened in February. By the end of April, everybody was accredited on the new story and the new pitch. Okay, so I first want to understand, you mentioned battle test. What do you mean when you battle test it with a customer? So you go in and have the conversation. We're fortunate to have a very strong, exceptional customer advisory board. So I presented to them. I got on the line and started talking to them and said, hey, give me your feedback. Is this what resonates with you? Is this fair representation of how we're solving your problems, how we're partnering with you? So really listening hard to them. And then also having some of our sales makers go out and test with some of their partners as well as customers. Because we are a channel heavy led organization, we also tested with some of our GSI partners as well as ISV partners. Okay. So again, these are all sort of before it goes out there. It's not in an ad. It's not on the website. We've got internal buy-in. Then we've got customer buy-in. Then you mentioned something called accredited. Talk about a little bit about what that meant. Sales enablement was the vehicle that got us there. But, again, in terms of building narratives and building brands as a marketer, how do you get everybody to the same narrative? How do you get us all on the same song sheet? So, I've got a team of now almost 1,200 folks within this organization. How does everybody stay on message? Because that was one of the challenges when I got to Boomi. Everybody had a different interpretation for the value of Boomi. And rightly so. It's a horizontal platform. It can mean many things to many people. A funny anecdote, our CEO was so invested, and this is critical too for CMOs. This is, really, advice that I took to heart from another leader that had shared this with me. You really need a strong relationship with your CEO, and you need the support. He would walk around the office, mostly with our engineers and folks that didn't get the original pitch. When we launched it at Sales Kickoff, he'd walk around with a wad of $5, $10 bills and go up and ask people who we were and what we did and why we existed. And so we had cards printed, so everybody had them up in their cubes, and they were able to internalize the new messaging. Yeah. I've never experienced that in my life. So getting everybody to really internalize it was critical to our success. And in order to do that, you need something sort of broad, like accelerate business outcomes, that sort of, it's a nice umbrella. And then they need to understand how to tell that story in the context of what they're doing with their customers, right? Exactly. So talk a little bit about that process, because it's so interesting. And this is exactly, if you read the special report that we did on B2B brand strategy on renegade.com, you'll see this is exactly the process that we're talking about. You got to get your employees on board. You got to get your customers on board. But we don't go into really great detail in this first report. I'm saving that for the book, so thank you for these. How do you get these folks to take this big idea, accelerate business outcomes, and make it personal? Great question. We have all these customer-facing people. So giving them the power to be able to have that conversation and own it was critically important. So first of all, understanding it, accrediting them, like I'd mentioned. And then what I encouraged them to do was start sharing on social, right? We had an awareness problem when I joined. We were using our corporate channels, but we really didn't have buy-in across the company. Mm-hmm. Our brand ambassadors are our staff, right? If we don't believe in our technology, who will?
Right.
And so unlocking that was important. We went through social media certification for the organization. We need to do that in order to have folks go out and push that material out. So in day-to-day interactions, I was starting to see from reps all over the world, ran into this customer or spoke at this partner event and had this conversation and proud to be accelerating their business. Those words started to show up, right? Unifying everything in your digital ecosystem faster than anybody else. The Boomi value prop. There was interpretation on that, all under the umbrella of accelerating business. It was, I still light up when I see it on social media. It makes me so happy because it's just, yes, they get it and they're galvanizing around it.
And I want to understand, certification means a lot of different things depending on where you are. And give me more detail on what that means. Did they take a test that they had to pass?
Yes. So we're serious about this, right? Uh-huh. And so, and again, great partnership with the sales organization. We needed to move to a solution selling methodology. That was the strategy behind this, right? So in addition to having the words on the slide and the elevator pitch around accelerating business, we started to galvanize and sell around 4 pillars that CIOs, our core buyer persona, and enterprise architects and developers were having challenges. There's tremendous complexity and fragmentation right now in the IT ecosystem. So what we did was build 4 pillars of messaging underneath the accelerating business outcome story. First one is connection, which is core to integration, right? Mm-hmm. Connecting A to B, connecting Salesforce to Marketo to Adobe, et cetera, right? Got to go make that happen. And then this is not linear. There's also customers that have challenges around modernization, especially when you have a multi-hybrid cloud situation in your enterprise with various stakeholders and various lines of business. And how do you get to a state where you can go modernize your infrastructure to be more cloud first, et cetera, reduce tech debt, turn off old servers that are sitting in the basement that you're not sure what is on them. Government, again, FedRAMP certification was something that came to us late last year. So modernization is a play that we run within Fed and in large enterprise to make sure people understand that Boomi can help them accelerate their modernization effort. Transformation is the third one. Mm-hmm. Transformation means customer experience, employee onboarding. We had that problem ourselves. So how do you go transform an experience using data at the core of that? And then finally, innovation. How do you go create new business models, leveraging the data assets you have within your organization? So we started to change the narrative in the market around those pillars and started to target plays based on those and based on personas that would be interested in those topics.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yes, it was.
And I'm not going to possibly unpack it all, but I am going to take a break. And then when we come back, I think we should talk about how this and what this meant to your customers in particular. And let's just think about that. Okay, we'll be right back. I'm back. I'm not going to talk about skiing, but I do want to talk about the special report that you will find on renegade.com. There is so much meat in this, in the 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy in 2020, that there are probably some folks out there that think I'm crazy to put that out there in front of a firewall. But I'm really hoping to get feedback from some of you all on the report, perhaps what's missing, because again, the book is going to be developed against this outline, but fleshing it out. There might be some guests that could help fill in some of the areas. You may disagree with some of the things. I'm really interested in your opinion on this piece, and your engagement with it will really help make the book that much stronger. So you'll find it on renegade.com. Very top, there's a banner that says 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy. Take a look. Okay, we're back, and we've been talking about this, having a purpose, which is awesome, right? We certainly believe in those, and so if we're helping our customers accelerate business outcome, the proof of that ultimately is the customer saying, "Hey, they accelerated my business outcome," right? That's the only way any of us will ever believe it, because you can say it as loud as you want. So let's talk about how you sort of got, or what you're doing in the area of getting customers to tell this story for you.
Yeah, great segue. Boomi World is our annual user conference. So last fall, we were in Washington, D.C., and we had over 85% of our breakouts have customers and partners co-present with us. So they were sharing stories and quantification of how they were able to accelerate their business using our platform. One of my personal favorites is a story around American Cancer Society. We were able to work with American Cancer Society to help build an application where we could aggregate data between volunteers and patients to provide rides to and from chemotherapy treatments. So we built an Uber-like app because we have a low-code application development platform on top of our integration technology. That's part of our iPaaS platform. And so from your cell phone, if I'm going into treatment, I can arrange for a ride to happen within my window and be able to be taken to my appointments and not stress about that aspect of it. That took 5,000 data point integrations, if you will, to go make that happen on the back end, right? What Uber does is incredibly genius.
Right.
It's very technologically complex. And so we were able to partner with them to go help deliver a seamless user experience, i.e. transform the patient experience around getting chemo.
Amazing and cool that Uber, was Uber a customer in any other way?
Yeah, Uber was actually not our customer. We built an app that modeled Uber for American Cancer Society.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay. All right. So interesting. Boomi World is it is obviously an amazing way of getting your customers together and celebrating everything that you do, and for them to learn from it. I love the number of 85% are the presenters. That's probably a very good goal for anybody who does a user conference, and I bet it's not usually that high. So that's amazing. What other ways did you do to get these customers to tell the story for you?
It didn't take much, luckily, right? We've got a very strong user community. We just actually branded our user community and launched it at Boomi World. It's now called, surprise, surprise, the Boomiverse.
Yes, it is. I saw that. I wanted to ask you about that too. So that was rebranded under your watch.
Yes, absolutely. It was critical because we have such a strong customer first focus. Right. It was just a natural extension of what we needed to do. So we get 65 to 70,000 monthly interactions happening on that portion of our community, of our site. So once we put some word out there, people tend to get excited. We also do user groups. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a lot of interaction with the users, bringing folks together to talk about challenges on the platform. And this is all customer led. They're interfacing with each other and helping each other innovate on the platform, right? It's exactly what you want in a community.
And that existed before you got there. You renamed it. Were there any other things that sort of marketing did to sort of to help it along?
Yeah, absolutely. So adding that umbrella of branding, right? We have, again, strong customer loyalty and customer satisfaction, which again are the underpinnings of marketing being able to do what we did. And also the training and certification program, we made that free for everybody last year. And again, this was not marketing led, this was the community team led, but how does marketing amplify that? How do we create gamification around training and certification to make it fun for people and have them promote the levels within the platform that they've been able to reach? And how do they get rewarded, for example, around
So
that?
let's talk about some of those things, because those are really interesting. What specifically did you change in training, for example? Because I'm imagining that there are badges, and you could be certified as a Boomi, I don't know, integrator or whatever. What are the? Tell us what those titles are.
Right. So developer, and then we train around elements of our platform. So core integration, Flow, which is our low code platform, as well as Hub, which is our data quality piece of our platform, as well as B2B and EDI, which is the partner management piece of the technology. So there's all these different elements to our platform. So to get full certification on the platform, you have to go through each of these gates. So there's badges associated with it. What marketing did was help work with the education team and put this structure in place, as well as the elevation of the Boomiverse with the launch of the astronaut that has become the ambassador for the program, and just starting to create much more of a galvanizing effect, if you will, and then having the community events that correspond with it.
Okay, what's the astronaut? Who's the astronaut?
So yes, great question. I forget that you don't know this. B is our astronaut. And so yes.
V or B?
B for Boomi.
B for Boom. B,
yes.
Okay.
So B is our astronaut that has become the mascot for Boomi.
Okay.
And so we launched him or her. B is gender neutral.
So they.
We launched this character with some great fanfare on stage during our COO's presentation, because this piece of the organization works and reports into him. So we launched that at Boomi World and created some fanfare and just created some excitement to have people, be able to take photos with B and have B represent the success that they're having on the platform.
Well, that's so funny. I mean, I just read an article in, I think it was in the New York Times about, Japan was mascot crazy and every little town had a mascot. But I haven't heard of a lot of companies having a mascot. What was the thinking behind, why'd you need one? And what did it do for you?
It's, again, a way to have fun with the technology. And I think, developers. Right? Developers don't gravitate towards Mandy's enterprise B2B marketing plays. Right?
Really?
Let's get real.
Oh,
right?
come on.
I know this about myself. I'm humble.
What, really? Right? You can't just do a quick little demand gen campaign for them? Hey, here's a piece of content. You're going to love this, developer.
Right.
Let me tell you why this product is so darn good. You can't do that?
Let me just tell you all about how awesome we are. And, you'll take everything at face value, right?
And we're going to make your life easier and better. So just click on this link and give us your name and we'll take care of you. Yes.
Right. Gleaming superhero smile here, right?
Yes. Okay. So that doesn't work, but an astronaut cracks the ice.
Well, it's a way for people to relate, right? We're creating personality for the community. We're giving them a representation of something. I go back to Jenkins. They've done a fabulous job with the butler. Right. If you're familiar with that, that ecosystem. And so for us, it was a fun way to take the Boomiverse and actually make it real. So we had to go for the astronaut, right? It was a natural extension.
Right. Okay.
And hopefully the astronaut will get some friends soon. So we've created kind of this narrative again in a way for folks to interact with the company that's not so institutional. That was the thinking around it. So make us much more approachable. B shows up at events, there's photo opportunities with B. People are tweeting out their photos with B. It's just a fun way for them to get more excited about this platform that's really helping them move their businesses forward.
And it's amazing how a little bit of fun in that world can go a long way. And it's just several times we've worked with companies that were targeting developers, and if you do it right, they're so happy. And it's so not about your brand, but it is about bringing them together. And if you can do that in a creative way, it's amazing. Were there any, so we have this Boomiverse, we have an astronaut. Is there any other sort of program that supported this effort that we should share that you think you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I think at the 30,000 foot level, going back to, we did the positioning of the company, we launched the Boomiverse, we also rebranded the business. And so that was critically important. And then again, Boomi World was the coming out party for the new brand. And what we did that my events team, just genius on this, was we set up a new store on the show floor. We set up a Boomi store. And when everybody checked into the conference, we gave them a $25 gift card to go redeem something that had the new logo on it. I actually was able to turn a profit on that store, and we actually made money. So people spent their $25 cards and then they bought more.
They just wanted the gear. What were they buying?
They were buying baby onesies. They were buying stuffed animal sloths. They were buying mugs. They were buying chargers, like you name it, t-shirts, hoodies. We sold out of that store. We sold out of most of that stuff within the second day of that store being open.
You know, this is a great moment to just sort of revel in marketing. When it's done right and people really like your company, one way to know it is they wear your brand.
Exactly.
They wear it around with pride. It's like, right. I'm part of the Boomiverse. Exactly. I'm part of this world. I feel really good about it. Okay, that's victory to some extent, and we could spend a lot more time on the rebrand because that's a huge thing in and of itself. What did you change?
We changed the entire look and feel of the brand. We were. When I got to the company, we were using the old Dell hardware logo and then Boomi in an Arial font, right? It was just something we hadn't done as an organization to modernize the brand. Okay. And so I walk in and, bring on an agency partner. And my first two words out of my mouth are, we need to modernize this brand to be young, hip software company. And it needs to have swagger and it needs to be badass.
Love that brief. Just for all your listeners, if you have a brief like that, please call me, 917-679-8852 immediately. I want that brief because that's awesome. And what's interesting is, it was a clear mandate. It wasn't a case where you were the new CMO coming in and saying, hey, I just want to tweak it. They rebranded 3 years ago. This was a case where there really wasn't any attention paid to the brand. It was a Band-Aid brand. There was the Boomi brand and the Dell brand, and we're just going to mash them together. Right. And we were too busy selling. Right. That was the story at Boomi. We had tremendous product market fit and we were growing a business. Right. And so from a lessons learned standpoint, let's try to, because all of this can be connected. It was a rebrand. Yes. And you were repositioning the company at the same time, right? You were sort of taking a step up in terms of how you described it. You were telling a new story about the brand. All these things are really important because one of the things that sometimes people do is they just change the logo to change the logo and there's no news. There was a lot of news here. Absolutely. The logo was probably the lowest amount of noise that we made. That just quietly went up on main stage. We didn't make hardly any fanfare about it because it's the Achilles heel of many marketers. Right? You come in, you're new. What do? You go change the logo, you paint pictures. Yeah. I did not want to be known as that CMO in full transparency. Right. I needed to come in and make some strategic updates to how we positioned ourselves to the market. We led with that. We led with a Win with Boomi campaign that highlighted the voice of the customer. We then started on the rebrand project and rebuilt a website, culminating at Boomi World with the launch of the Boomiverse, as well as this new user conference. That was the new face of this organization. So we had rolling thunder of momentum throughout the year, and Boomi World was the launch point for all of it. And I'm just going to emphasize a few things here, and then you're going to sort of correct me on a couple of them. But if you're thinking about rebranding your company, what we have here is a playbook for that. And what I love is purpose first, right? Mm-hmm. Internal buy-in first, then customer buy-in. Then in some ways it's funny because it wasn't about words and picture. It wasn't about pictures and a new logo at that point. It was about why do we exist? Then we get to words and pictures and we say, oh, well, we can sort of, the mission has sort of changed and elevated. Let's elevate what we look like. And then when we launch this thing, let's launch it to our customers. And, the opportunity to launch at your annual conference, The wonderful thing about it is, God forbid there was something wrong, which you're pretty sure were, but at least you're only doing it among family, right?
There was a lot of sleepless nights, let me say.
Yeah.
It's a huge team effort to make this happen.
But I would also remind you that you did say you had sort of tested this with customers. You had talked to your customer advisory board. You had gotten their feedback on it. You were always listening. Is this true? Does this sound real? Which is important. You know, one of the interesting things about it is, and I think going back to the language that you said about accelerating business outcomes, is that never stops. Right? It's not an end point, right? Because whatever fast is today, it's going to be 20 times that tomorrow. Thank you, Moore's Law, right? It's just going to be faster. So I think that's an interesting part of it. I also think it's interesting that there was a campaign in there called Win with Boomi. Mm-hmm. Well, what is winning? Winning is essentially a different way of saying accelerating business outcomes, right? And so you don't want to get stuck necessarily in thinking you have to always use the language of the purpose statement, particularly in headlines. If you do, then you've set yourself up for, oh, this is just a campaign. Right. And that's really problematic when you're doing a rebranding. It can't be perceived as a campaign. It has to be perceived as something that is game changing, that is an organizational change, that we're all moving in this new direction, which is awesome. Okay. How'd I do?
Awesome. And what I'd like to add is the hero is the customer.
Right.
And that's what we're focusing on.
So at the very beginning of the show, I had a rather lengthy introduction about the highest compliment that a customer can pay you is calling you a strategic partner. And I'm curious, if you think about this journey that you went through, you knew some of them were already doing it. Do you see, are there any lessons learned on things that companies can do, CMOs can do, to really impact this ultimate goal of getting your customer to say, gosh, they're our strategic partner?
Fantastic question. I'll share kind of my journey within Boomi. I think, my natural inclination is one of teamwork and collaboration. So working across the organization is critically important. I mentioned, buy-in from the CEO and the relationship there, but equally important is working through product, sales, and operations success services, right? Making sure that all those legs of the stool, yes, it's a big stool, are covered, right? If you can do that, you start to uncover what the most important things to the business are, what the pulse of the business is. So that to me was critically important to the success. It was that, reaching across and making sure that we were all aligned, and also sharing along the way in terms of the changes we were making, because, again, new person on the team, don't want this to come across as marketing's got another harebrained scheme. This has to be grounded in company strategy. So that was critically important as a part of this process.
Love that you said that. Step number 7 in the 12 steps is B2B strategy is welcome we, folks. Yes. It's right there. And welcoming we says you CMO, sadly, can't do this alone. You are not the hero. You are the glue. You are the person who does what you talked about, going to product, going to sales, getting the organization ready, and making sure that everybody is aligned. You just can't do this alone, sadly, right?
Not in this
So as you sort of summarize this whole process that you went through, do you have 2 do's and a don't that we can wrap the show up with? Beyond that. Now, you know what? I'm gonna pause and say, you already answered that question. You said that you already answered it. That's silly. All right. So I'm gonna strike that and I'm gonna ask one last question. How have you measured the success of all of these things that you've done?
Again, awesome question. Any good marketing program needs to be grounded in quantification. So for us, we didn't talk specifically about demand generation, but we have a remit to the organization, right? The reason we exist. Again, CMOs need to start acting if they are not already, like general managers. So what are you driving in terms of value for the business? As of today, we have 36% of all of our direct customers as publicly referenceable. So making sure that customer marketing is doing the job and globally sharing local stories, that's critically important. Share of voice, we're number one in comparison to all of our competitors. During the week of Boomi World alone, we were up 20 points because we didn't really focus just on the event. We also created a digital event around it. That was critically important. And marketing is driving north of 40% of the pipeline for the business.
40% of pipeline. There you go. Hard to argue with. And it's funny, whenever I get together with a bunch of CMOs, we'll have that conversation. And it's interesting. It ranges from anywhere from 15% to 70%. And I look at the 15% folks and am concerned. And I look at the 70% folks and I'm in awe. But 36% is really good. And I suspect that's higher than it was when you got there.
Yeah, and industry average for customer referenceability is 15 to 20%. So again, these were assets that were given to us. Marketing didn't create this, but we've been able to up level and also create a movement to drive more customers to share their stories with us.
All right. I feel like we have nailed it completely. If you listen to this episode, you have so many ideas to take away. And if you don't, I apologize. But I can't help you at all. But Mandy, this was awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you, Drew. This was so much fun. Just a great conversation. Really appreciated it.
Speaking of really appreciating people, the listeners of this show, I'm so grateful that you spent the time with us. As always, I encourage you to go to renegade.com and check out the show notes, and probably we'll find some links. We'll be having a quiz on what iPaaS actually is. After the show, feel free to offer your own suggestions. And until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.